Hey everybody, this is Daniel. Today we are going to be painting a miniature from Test of Honor, the Samurai Miniatures game by Warlord Games. So, what we're going to do is go ahead and paint the exclusive Unarmored Samurai. Get a good look at him here. So I've already mounted and primed him, and then I just did a white dry brush over him to kind of bring out some of the detail. Here, let's get you a closer look here. See if it'll focus. Okay. There, so you see just a little bit of dry brush on him to bring the detail up, just to kind of make my life easier. I like dry brushing all my miniatures before I actually get into the painting. That way it's just, a lot smoother. You don't miss anything when you're going over them. So, yep. And I based him on the base that came with the metal figure. Alright, cool. So, I'm going to be using Vallejo model paints exclusively, and I got a few different colors. I'm going to try to make it as simple and compact as possible. So we're going to start off with skin. Always recommend with any miniature painting them like you're dressing them. So what's underneath everything is his skin. So for the skin, I'm going to use Flat Flesh by Vallejo, or Vallejo. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Paint seems just a little thin right now. I normally don't paint with my paints too thinned out. I always worry that it's just going to bleed. I mean, it's not that big of a deal when you're starting off with flesh, because this is your base layer of everything. So you'll be able to paint anything and everything over your mistakes right now. And it's a light color too, so it's not really going to show up too much underneath the miniature or underneath other paints if you start having to go over it and correct your mistakes. I always think it's better to just kind of get more flesh on than you think, because you don't want to have exposed, unpainted, Okay, and sorry we had a little bit of technical difficulties last time. The camera stopped recording, and we missed a big chunk of what I did, so I'm going to catch you back up. Alright, so here we are now. All the base layers are essentially done. I'll explain to you what they were. I didn't really use that many colors. Essentially just 3 colors on his cloak. Like I said before, I'm using Vallejo paints. So his pants, losing focus here. His pants are made with flat blue. His shirt is azure. It's the same batch of paint as the flat blue, and then U.S. dark green. Now this one's from a World War II paint set, still Vallejo paint. So that's essentially the three colors that I use for the majority of him. The other colors you just see are flat flesh for the flesh, white obviously for the white bits, black for the hair. I used a flat red for the scabbard, and then a white again for the handle behind his coat. I used a gold accent on the pommel, and then again white handle, gold pommel, gold guard at the base of the sword, and then I just used a flat metallic for the sword itself. So that's it. There's no specialty shading or anything crazy going on here, just the base colors. So you didn't miss anything too wild. Should be easy to kind of catch up. And now we're going to go to more the detailing of the miniature itself. So first thing I'm going to do, I don't know if you can notice, but there are two little patches on his kimono top, and we're going to try to do those. They're right there on either side of his chest. I'm going to do those right now. And so starting with the symbols on both sides of his kimono. I know it's hard to see them right now, but I'll try to point them out. Right there and there. So we're not actually going to do any crazy color on that. I'm just going to put it black for now. Now we are eventually going to apply washes to a lot of this, and it'll stand out a little bit more once it's washed. I know you're thinking, well, the black's not going to let it stand out, but after we do the wash and we go back to the highlighting phase, I'm going to highlight it, a gray, a light gray, so it does sort of stand out and pop a little bit. So for now, it's just going to look like a black blop on both sides of them. And again, since this is the early phases where we haven't done any highlighting or shading, so any mistakes you do make at this point are very correctable, because all the colors are still pretty basic, so you can just go back over anything with that base color. So we're not messing with hues or shades right now. Alright, cool. So as you can see, just two little dots. 1, 2. The light's making them not look as defined as they are, but I assure you they are black. Alright. So then next, really we don't have too many colors to do before we start applying the wash. I am going to work on the sandals right now. So as you can see, his feet are white. We're going to put brown on the bottom and then do all the lacing, which is going to be kind of intricate. This part's a little tedious. So let me get the brown ready and we'll get moving on that. Now for this I'm just going to use flat brown. It's probably my most used basic color. Everything needs a little brown, it seems. So this one's going to be a little slow going. You're going to have to bear with me. I'm actually going to bust out a new brush for a portion of this. But first we're going to get this boring part done, just doing the bottom of his feet. Now with this, any palette really works. I've always used a dry palette forever. I just recently started using a wet palette, and it's pretty amazing, actually, especially if you're someone that kind of paints a little slower or just likes preserving your paints as long as you can. The wet palette's the way to go because it keeps your paints from drying out, and it also helps you dilute them a little bit if they are kind of thick. You can just wet the palette even more, and it'll start to loosen up that paint, make it not so globby. So if that is an issue for you, I would really recommend investing in one. They're not that expensive, and it's really kind of changed how I paint, because it just makes everything so accessible and easy. I don't have to worry about using as much of one color as I can at a time because it's going to dry out and I'm going to waste it. This actually prevents a lot of that waste. Pretty nice. So as you can see, I'm not too worried about getting the base painted, because eventually we are gonna, put some flocking on that base and build it up a little bit, make it look really nice and cool. Alright, so right now it looks like we got the base of the sandals done. Now for the tricky part, actually doing the straps themselves. Now there's a lot of them, and they're kind of hard to see, especially after you've painted over them initially. Since I did white for his socks, it's going to be a little tricky, but it shouldn't be that bad. So I like starting on one side of the foot and just doing all the straps on one side. So like I would do, the outside of the right foot or the outside of the left foot entirely, and then flip them over and adjust my angle, and then work on the inside of that foot. Rather than trying to work your way all the way around in one go, just, you never want to rush something that's straight lines. It doesn't really work out. Alright, so as you can see right now, the outside of this foot's pretty much done. One between the toe, and then just move them around, find your new angle. So for me, I'm going to flip them over. Hopefully you can see in there, it's a little dark. So I can't quite get that angle from right there. I'm going to have to go back around this side. Shoot through it. I guess sorry you couldn't see that. Alright, let me tip it up for you. There, see I'm working back there, the ankle. Sorry, I gotta break your view to make sure I don't mess up. Alright, great. That back sandal looks pretty solid. Alright, now for the right foot. Alright, great. Sandals are done. Now when we're going over later and highlighting, the sandals actually won't, the straps themselves won't really require any highlighting at all. Because the brown doesn't need to pop so much. If it gets darker than I want it to get, I might do just a little bit of highlighting on the straps. But I will highlight his toes and make that white pop out. So okay, that's it for the flip-flops or sandals. Now I'm going to do something that I've been planning and practicing. We're actually going to do a kanji symbol on the back of his kimono just to give it a little extra accent. Okay, and so we're going to write a kanji on the back of his kimono jacket. Actually going to do this symbol right here. Means humble. I figure, he's got no armor, so he must be pretty humble. So there's not really much of a technique for this that you can really explain. It's nice to kind of relax and take it easy when you're doing this, because you're essentially just doing some calligraphy. So you're just sort of painting on the miniature. Trying to get focus here. It does not want to happen. We'll get going. It'll catch up with me. There we are. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to try to make it not too giant on him. I've made that mistake before and run out of room, and it's not fun for anyone. It might help if I actually put enough paint on my brush, right? So if anyone watching this actually is Japanese or has a much better grasp on their calligraphy than I do, feel free to criticize me to no end, because it is definitely not a language I'm familiar with. I can count to 20 in Japanese, but that's about it. I'm just switching brushes, sorry for the delay right now. Alright, great. This one will be a little bit better for what I'm trying to achieve. There we go. Sorry about that. One thing I do enjoy about doing the Japanese calligraphy is there's a lot of room for error. I can make a mistake and it doesn't look horrible. Alright, great, there we go. I'm happy with it. I hope you like it. Alright, so yeah, that means humble, unless I was lied to. Alright, so now we've got all the basic parts of his outfit done. I'm just going to do one more little detail. Actually, not for his outfit though. I'm going to start working on his eyes a little bit. So now, eyes are quite a challenge, I think, for most people. A lot of people skip them. I know I skip doing eyes a lot of the time. But it adds so much to the life of the character. I mean, when you can actually get down there and look and see them, see their entire face. I mean, even though I'm not displaying them, really, I don't have a fancy case that you look at my miniatures in or anything. I really only use them for gaming. So, maybe a wasted effort, but I just, when I want to get down there and check out my battlefield, it looks so cool. So my technique, that I like to use is I do the white dots. You gotta make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush, just enough to get it in there. But if you do make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, especially right now. So I'm actually going to switch my brush. I think this is going to be too thick to even hit that spot. I got some new brushes, so I'm going to bust one of them out right now. Now, length of your brush is not as important as just a really nicely defined tip. You also want to make sure your white paint isn't too thick. Mine might be a little thicker than I'd like, but it should still work. I mean, it's a very fine balance. Because if it's too thick, it's going to be massive, and if it's too thin, it's going to bleed all over the place. So in all honesty, mine's a little thick right now, and it's making it difficult for me. This just does not want to stay focused today, does it? Okay, great, and I'm right-handed, and I can really only go this direction. So I'm flipping them over. Alright, excellent. We are getting it. I just got to keep correcting this one eye. It's just not showing up the way I would like it to. Watch now, I'm going to bleed all over the place. Alright, giant white eyeballs. Look at him glaring at you on the camera. They're big, they're creepy, they're white eyeballs. Alright, we will go with this. This is looking alright. I actually think it might look better from your perspective than it might look from mine, which is good for me, but not good for the miniature. Alright, so we're going to go with that. That's looking good. I don't want to overdo it. Quit while I'm ahead. So now, as that dries a little bit, we're going to sort of correct the overlap. So I'm sure you can probably notice. Let's get as close as we can. As you can probably notice, there's a little sloppiness to it. It's kind of going over the eye socket in some spots, but that's not a big deal. What we do is just clean it up with a little bit of the flesh tone, which is the flat flesh. And now we can really make sure that the eye is exactly the shape we want it to be. Honestly, when it comes to eyes, you can kind of overdo the white and without really stressing too much about it. Just with the knowledge that you are probably going to go back in afterwards and clean up around the eye. Really make sure it's the shape you want it to be. Sorry, it's a little thin. I'm trying to thicken up that paint. So here we go. Tug of war right now with this eye. So now here's a perfect example of what I was talking about. See, his left eye looks great. That right eye, I tried to clean it up and messed it up. So we're going to wait for that to dry. That left eye looks great though, so we're going to go in with the left eye and put the eyebrow above it. Again, the facial details add so much. If you ever have any intention of, taking pictures or putting them on display, you're going to regret not doing those details. So I am dealing with the miniature painter's biggest pet peeve. Paint that won't come off the brush. And yes, I know, it's my fault. My paint's too thick. So I'll thin it out just a tad. Yeah, he's got a nice evil brow raise going. He's ready for business. Although he's humble. There we go. One eyebrow completed. So if you just look at it that side, oh yeah, looks great. Look at this side, Quasimodo. Alright, so he should be dry now. Oh no, the paint's bleeding. So now I can go back in and try to fix that other eye. Just a dash of white. Alright, great, back in business. I got just a little stuff. Okay, so now we're going to actually go in and finish up these eyes. So just like I did with the left eye, I'm going to go in with the right eye and do this eyebrow. So whatever side you're comfortable with, as far as like if you paint left to right, never try to go against that. If you're comfortable with your brush stroking from left to right, always do that. Because as soon as you try to do something you're not used to, you're going to make a mistake. And experimenting's all part of the process, but if you know it's not going to happen right, don't try it. Don't push yourself to go against your natural grain of your brush stroke. And try it with something you don't care about, or a miniature that's not that important, but if you're trying to do detailed work, just stick to your techniques. Alright, so there we go. I gave him a little bit of an expression. I don't know if it shows up too well here. He's got one raised eyebrow and one more of a natural look, like he's kind of, giving you some sort of, hey, what's going on over there? I'm going to slice you. Alright, so now we got brows, we got eyes. And here's where it could all go wrong or tie together perfectly. It is the pupil. So I used to do pupils with a brush, and it just never looked good. So I've since switched to using a pen. So I actually got this. It's like a really nice, fine line marker for people that are pen and paper artist. It's not really for this, but it works really well. I got the smallest tip I could possibly find. I don't know if you can even see it. It's really tiny. But so is this guy's eyes. So even though this is small, it might still be a challenge to get it right. And the hardest part of all of it is not looking cross-eyed. Alright, so one in, and two. Make this one a little bigger. Awesome. You see that? He's got a face. Fantastic. Okay, cool. And so now we have literally gotten every type of base coat accomplished on him. And so here we are, ready to move on to one of the later stages. All the base colors, everything, all accents are on there. Now we are just going to do some shading and highlighting. And then we will have basing left to do, and he will be completely done. So, to start off with shade, we're going to do the base colors last, actually, this go around. We are going to start off with flesh. So since it's so far from the rest of the colors, the face and hands, there should be no problem doing this first out of all the different phases of washing we're going to do. So just like when you're painting, make sure you're being careful and getting it only on the areas that you want. Now you do want to get a fair deal on there, enough to really fill in all those cracks and crevices, but not so much to the point where it's bleeding onto other parts of your character. So as you can see, he's already getting some more depth to that hand right there. And those knuckles and fingers are really starting to pop. Now it is important when you do a certain area to make sure you get it all washed at once. If you don't, you'll get sort of some strange lines where you can tell one brush stroke dried and the next one was applied over it, and it just doesn't look that great. So try to make sure you get it done all in one go, at least in an area. So the shade is going over the eyes, but it won't make a big deal. It'll just kind of help, again, define them, and it shouldn't cover up the white or the pupil too much. If it does, you can always go back and add just a little dash of white to make it stand out, but at least in this case, I don't think it's going to be necessary. Alright, cool. Try to give you some zoom on that, get a really good look at how that miniature is doing. Let's see if I can get you. There you go. Awesome. Alright. So, flesh is done. Flesh for the flesh. Next one I'm going to do is Green by Citadel. Now this I'm only doing on his kimono top. I'm going to use a slightly larger brush, at least for a portion of it. So instead of using this sort of dulled, see it there, I use this to kind of get larger areas but still keep some detail. Since I'm going to be doing his entire kimono, I'm going to use a brush about this size. So by comparison, it's significantly larger. But I'm just going to start on his back, and then we'll see if we maybe move into a finer brush for the rest of the miniature. As you can see, we're really affecting base colors, and that's fine. That's an effect I knew was going to occur, and so anticipating it, it will just make that base color, when we go back to highlight, really stand out and have a really defined highlight to it. You know, whenever you use a shade, you should always just assume you're going to darken the colors, and you know, you're going to have more of a hue from the shade you're putting on than you did from that initial coat. So as long as you plan for that, then, you know, don't panic. As long as it looks the color you're going for, you know, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, if you're doing a commission job for someone and they're going for a specific tone, it's going to be a different story, but that's a little bit more advanced than what we're doing today. Just make sure you get all the areas. It's like I said earlier, if you miss it now and have to go back over it, it's going to look a little odd. You'll be kind of streaky. So actually the back of his coat looks a little streakier than I was hoping, but it's okay, we can work on it a little, try to lighten it up. There we go. Blended it a little bit better now. Okay, cool. So that's the green. Next color we're going to are blues. So we're just going to use this one shade of blue for both the top of his gi and the bottom. And as you'll see again, it will just make more of a dramatic highlight when we go back in later. So it's not a drastic change in shade that we're getting with the blue and the light blue, and you know, that is optimal for the situation at hand, because we want to make sure that when we wash both the light blue and the dark blue, that they should look different even though it's the same shade of wash. Since their base colors are different enough, should be a noticeable difference between the two. And that's really what you're going for when it comes to having an economical purchase, such as one shade of blue instead of several shades of blue wash. Sorry for that awkward angle. Alright. Excellent. And again, for this part, I'm going to use the larger brush to do his pants, or his hakama. So I'm sure you can tell I'm doing a combination of up and down strokes and side to side. Really, it comes down to the pattern of the ripples that you're trying to shade. You want to go opposite the pattern. That way the paint pulls off the brush and pools down in those little crevices. If you do straight with it, it won't pool as much. Sometimes you want to, if that's a problem. If you notice it's pooling too much in an area, then you might want to, paint with the grain. But for the most part, you want to go against it. So you can see it starts to gather in those low points, and that's the effect we're going for with any wash. Now, even though you're not going to see under his legs, I like to make sure the wash gets under there too, just so when it all is said and done, it looks uniform. Alright, great. Done with the blue. Now, everything we haven't washed up until this point, like his feet, weapon, hair, scabbard, going to use Nuln oil. I feel like it has sort of a gloss to it, not all the time, and it works the best with whites. If you're trying to go for a sort of an armory look. So we're going to put it on the white undershirt of his kimono. Really, what we're trying to do more than actually give it a tint is to fill in that little crease. That is the edge of his collar, just to create a little bit more of a line there. And we'll do his belt. So again, bringing out that detail, able to see the knot now right there. A little dot there at the top of his opening of his scabbard. We'll do the handle of his katana. Now again, you're having to be real careful that you're not getting it on his skin or any other parts that you've already washed. So just, be very conscious of that while you're working. His head and his hair. And then his other sword. I guess this one's actually the katana, the other one was just his sidearm. Oh, I don't know if you can notice it's bleeding over a little bit on his finger, but that's okay. Soak that up real quick. Same right there, just soak it up. Just dry your brush off, and it should work as a wick and kind of fix that mistake if you catch it in time. I'm going to do his blade this time. I don't always wash the blade or shade it. Sometimes I want that extra shiny look. But I feel, let's assume this guy's been on the battlefield for a while, and maybe it's not dirt, but the shiny patina has worn off a little on his blade. Who knows? Let's just make it look a little dirtier. Don't forget, you want that uniform look, so make sure you flip your miniature over, get every spot. And then, lastly, his boots, his shoes. Alright, and there we go. He is shaded. Okay, and we've let him dry just a little bit, enough to start working on the highlighting. So essentially this is the last phase of actually painting the miniature. After we highlight, the last thing we're going to do is start basing them. So we're going to do them completely head to toe. This guy will be totally done, ready to either put on display or, you know, take out some enemy samurai in the battlefield. So we're going to follow the same technique we did when putting on the base layer. Sorry, that was the sound of me shaking paint. And we're going to start with flesh. Still going to be a little careful because he might not be dry in every single spot, but it should be fine. Alright, and this we are going to bust back out magnifying glass. Now for highlighting them, I'm just going to hit the real high points like the tip of his nose, top of his cheekbones, do his bottom lip, and his chin. Great. Looks good. We'll even give him a little bit right there on the top of his ear. And then we'll move on to his hands. The hands are fun. They're not that challenging in my opinion, and you really get a lot out of it. So you're just going to follow the high points of his knuckles. Even though this is underneath and not really following the theory of highlighting the high points, I think it still looks good. I'll put the paint on a little thick there, but it's okay. I think it'll dry nicely. Cool, and we'll highlight on the wrist. In the other hand now. And this one you really want to hit those knuckles well, because this is in the right direction to be hitting that light. I don't normally do a specific direction when it comes to highlighting my characters. I just assume the sun is always right over them. And that way I don't have to worry about coming from the left or hitting some strange angle. Usually if you assume the sun's over them, it comes out pretty well on your miniature. Great. And flesh is done. So this is definitely a part where you want to use a very nice tipped brush, nicely tipped brush. This is a 0. It's, I have smaller, shorter brushes, but the tip is so nice on this. That's the main reason I'm using this one. Alright, get some light. So we just finished the skin. Now we're going to move to his, you know what, let's do the green on the outside. Into his green jacket. Now, the color on his green kimono is basically the color it's going to be. I'm not going to bring it back to that original green. I'm going to keep it the shade it is now, and I'm just going to highlight the high points with that old green. Now sometimes I'd go back and dry brush a part that I washed and bring the whole area back up to that main color and then highlight even brighter. But it takes a little bit longer, and I want to do sort of the quicker way today. So remember, you're sort of in the home stretch right now in painting, so take your time. Make sure your lines are smooth. Hold your breath sometimes if you have to. So the collar I'm doing a little different. I'm actually brightening up the middle instead of like the top or the bottom of the fold. I just feel like it's going to pop a little bit better, stand out and create more depth if it's completely filled in and it's got those dark spots on either side. I'm going to go back in and highlight the folds anyways, so I'll still get that effect I'm hoping. I'm sure you noticed I made that mistake earlier, so good chance to go back and fix it right now. So what are we going to do around the kanji on his back, you may ask? We're just not going to highlight it. I mean, you can, it's doable. It's not impossible. It's not even insanely difficult. It's just going to take a little bit more time than I'm trying to spend on this miniature. This is not one I'd enter into a contest or anything. This is more, I would say, like one step above table painted. Maybe 2 steps above that. But if we were painting for, a competition, we'd be doing different techniques all around, honestly. I wouldn't be using so many washes. So with doing this, it's crazy important that your paints are the right consistency, so they're not clumping or bleeding all over the place. I really, really recommend getting a wet palette. That's what I'm using right now for this, and that's why my consistency is near perfect. It just moves so smoothly onto the miniature. And I'm not having to do any weird dilution combination. I really just squirted the little squeeze bottle onto the palette, and the water is soaking into it. Maybe I'll do another video some other time just showing the wet palette. Excuse me. The white palette. It is white. Hey, that actually looks pretty good. I think that's as far as I'm going to go with his kimono. We're going to move on to the undergarment. I'm not sure. The kimono under his kimono. I really should have looked up all the terminology before this video. I apologize, everybody. So, you can't see. So we're going to start with his top. We're going to use just blue, a light blue, azure. Actually, strike that, take it back. We're going to do white first. I'll explain why in a second. Oh no! I just dropped my brush in the white paint. Awesome. Yay, skillful hands. Okay, here we go. Back to the magnifier. And I'm going to try to do the tiniest bit of highlighting on the handle. got these little ridges and bumps. I'm going to see if I can bring those bumps up. Okay, I think that's enough to create the highlight. Oh, almost forgot his bun. His top knot. Alright, and the last bit of white we're going to do, not going to do his eyes. I think they still look good. I'm just going to do a little bit on his toes. On top of his foot. This one just a little bit on his pinky toes. Top of his foot. Maybe his ankle bone. A little dap on his big toe. Alright, whites are done. So I did white instead of going to the blue because I knew that there was a possibility I was going to mess up with that white when doing his high shirt collar, and just in case I did, I could fix that with a blue highlight because I'm going to highlight that collar anyways. Thankfully I didn't really mess up, but I can fix a mistake from earlier. Never get too discouraged along the way by making a mistake, unless it's huge. Then I guess still don't get to just be sure to fix it. But if it's a tiny mistake, you don't have to worry so much about fixing it in that moment because you still got layers to put on. That'll give you a chance to fix it. Sorry, I was concentrating. Alright, and that highlight is done. So while we are in between upper half and lower half of the body, I'm actually going to mix a little bit of paint here and create sort of a gray, maybe a grayish blue. Actually, I'm going to need some black. Sorry. Because like I said earlier with the little symbols on the top of his kimono on either side, you still can't see them right now, and I'm going to try to fix that by doing a nice little gray to bring up those high points. these two spots. I don't think I created enough of the paint. Yep. Alright, so I will make more. Okay, here we go. Alright, so there's the gray, and since it is so small, we're going to put even smaller dots of white on there so that, you know, it's something visible, because right now it's still impossible to see. There we go. Okay, now for red. Red's just going to be, you know, essentially one stroke. Okay. Now, final highlight color, flat blue. Sorry, losing focus a little bit. I apologize. Let's try to get that. There we go. Hey! We're in focus again. Did we lose it? Oh, where'd it go? There we are. Actually, gonna adjust something. Bear with me. Okay, cool. We're just about done highlighting. Fully highlighted. Just set him down. So now, like I said, we're doing this whole thing, beginning to end. And so now we are done with fine detailing. Next thing left to do is we're going to paint his entire base black. We're going to paint it black because after we are going to put some Alright, so we've painted the base black and now we're going to flock it. This is the final step. I've already mixed my two flocking agents I'm going to do. One is this blended turf green blend, and then this is a static grass. See right there. See, this one's much darker than this one. This is much darker than this. So I mixed them together to kind of come up with something a little bit in between. All you need is just some glue. I like using wood glue. You can use regular Elmer's glue. It's just not going to be as durable. But I must say that I do have a couple that are done in Elmer's glue. So we're just going to put glue on the top. Best way to do it, let's put a little next to whatever you're working on. Create a space that's going to get messy. This is going to get a little messy. A brush you don't care about, get some glue on there. Just paint it on. Try to get it all on the top. Try not to get too much on the sides. Ideally, try not to get any on the sides, but it's not the end of the world if you do. Try not to get it on your miniature, because that will be really awkward when you actually drop the flocking and your character has grass growing out of him now. Alright, before it gets too dry, start dropping the flock in. Just make sure you cover every last little bit. And then, even go ahead and tap it down. Make sure it's sticking. When you're confident you've got it, just give them a couple little taps, both directions. If you want to save your excess flocking, it's always a good idea to do that, especially if you did make a mixture and you like it. Should get that back off. Bring your miniature back over. Give them a few more taps. And there we go. Let's get a good view here. Alright, there he is. Based, ready for battle. Ready to go. Alright everybody, this is Daniel. Hope you enjoyed the video. Maybe you learned something.